Please remember to leave a like, a comment, share the video about, and if you haven't already, subscribe. Thank you. Well, isn't this just fantastic? Since Sunday, a number of statements have come out concerning Imallexx and those associated, formerly associated, currently associated with Imallexx. I thought what we'd do first is go through a few of those statements. We'll start with Will N.E., who said, "Firstly, I really hope Alice is doing well and commend her massively for having the courage to get that out there. As Mia mentioned, there were rumours of his behaviour earlier last year. Myself and a few others haven't had contact with him since, or been his friend for even longer. With that being said, the severity of the ABUSE that Alice published was far worse than anything I'd heard being discussed. That Google Drive is abhorrent, and what he put her through is inexcusable. We'll get to Mia soon, I promise, so you'll have all the context for that." Memulus: "Alex and I lived together between 2018 and 2022. They started dating in 2023. I've only seen him in person 2 or 3 times since moving out. I don't socialise much at all in the typical UK YouTube circles, especially in the last couple of years. I only found out about the situation in general on the 2nd of April this year, when a fellow content creator brought it up to me in a call. When I suggested a joint recording between us and him, he said he didn't know any specifics, or what was even being alleged, just that it was bad. All I had heard prior to this is that they argued frequently. A couple of weeks later, Alice started posting TikToks alluding to the situation. It wasn't until just after that I got a bit more clarity, when I was brought out to dinner with another creator and they brought up the fact Alice had previously published some text messages from him on TikTok before deleting them. I knew it was bad, but I didn't know just how bad it was until I went over all the information when it was made public. I don't want to take attention away from the victim, but I think it's important I clarify my perspective and timeline of events. Please send your support to Alice." The reason for these comments is because Memulus had made a previous statement. I did post it yesterday as a short, and I will post it here again now. Since the release of the Google document exposing Imallexx for being a rather heinous individual that many knew he was to be over the years, but this was very different, former friends, some podcaster folk that knew Imallexx have come out and given statements. Memulus, for example, had stated that he was not aware of the situation, and while he would have waited for both parties, the evidence is overwhelming. Jake Baz indicating that we should all be supporting Alice because what is said in this, not great. Inaba also provided a statement on the situation as well. It's also come to light that another person called King Annie has released her own 2-page document talking about Imallexx. Do expect a follow-up video on that in the near future. For somebody that is so quick to dole out accusations and rather snide remarks, I'm impressed at the level of silence Imallexx is giving, especially considering he's been trending on Twitter for 3 days. Surely the internet sensation would want to capitalise on this. YouTuber Inaba also posted a lengthy statement with messages to accompany it. Messages like this one. "By the way, this is when I found out about the Alex stuff. This is me messaging him after the creator made some tweets calling Alex basically terrible and something on the lines of the truth always comes out. TF is Charlie on about. Reply, sure. Furthest thing I knew before that were rumours said to me by someone who went to a party that he'd fallen out with his housemate after they apparently wrote things down of him saying talk about them. Back when Alex was living with the people he lived with, I did really speak to him much. Dude went kinda MIA, other than YouTube stuff, as he had a new set of friends, which was pretty normal. Only summer year Alex started properly interacting with us in a server to play games. I've always been friends with him, seen Alex about once since 2023. The dude never discussed personal stuff with us, solely just YouTube and games. This was March this year, when we thought they were still together or seeing each other. On the 13th of March, has to be Alice. Fraser, you think? Reply, I'm not answering these questions to a simple question, yeah, I think so. We suspected they kept breaking up and then trying to work on things when re-following each other and unfollowing, but the man never wanted to discuss it with us ever. Literally zero idea what was going on. A refusal to talk about it, but no indication of the true extent. With Inaba, oh no, they've unfollowed each other again, I just checked. On the 10th of January 2024, they were still making videos together, as was him and his old friend group until early 2024, so really had nothing to go off. When I saw that tweet in April, I called him and was told about their toxic relationship. Proof of the phone call. Call ended. And from there to now, I and others were trying to work out what the hell was going on. I know even before this situation, Alex has been involved in a lot of stuff, but I've always been loyal to him as a friend and tried to stick by him, even if he was perceived as a dickhead by a great many of people. Hi, one of them. Me and that man used to argue and fall out a lot, but last year when we started playing games together, I genuinely thought he was becoming a much better person and happier person. And I thought that was because he had finally settled down with someone, and that thought now makes me feel ill and an overwhelming amount of guilt. With this Alice situation, I personally was kept in the dark on it for such a long time. I think that makes me feel truly guilty. What makes me feel truly guilty is I genuinely thought those two were really happy together until me and friends saw signs they kept falling out via unfollows and TikTok reposts. Me and my friendship group, Alex and even Alice, used to play games together quite a lot. And now looking back on what was going on genuinely effing shocks me and makes me feel so ill. Sorry to make these stories about myself, but I just thought I'd explain a brief timeline of events for further understanding. Me and Alex had a very toxic friendship. I would prefer to keep that private for the most part. But with all these clips, recordings, messages in the document, I read them for the first time this week too, and that makes me feel more sick. The fact I got zero honesty even in the end. Whole thing is just awful, and again nothing but support goes out to Alice. I think what makes me feel really disturbed is being genuinely worried about him as a friend between December and March of this year. I noticed he was upset a lot more when we played games or discussed YouTubing calls, and I and others in the group tried being there as a mate, even asking him what's up quite a lot, never got an answer. So instead we played games and hoped things would get better for him. Just a mate supporting another mate who was going through it mentally, just so effed up knowing why he was actually upset. But yet honestly, that's as much as I can really say, as that's basically the whole timeline.
So earlier I mentioned an individual called Mia. Mia is the ex-girlfriend of Will NE, who had put out a statement saying, "This is something I have been aware of since May last year, and is something that, in my opinion, is well known throughout the industry. I can't speak for people who aren't in our group or who I don't see regularly, but the openness at which this was discussed amongst people last year, I genuinely find it hard to believe that creators close to Alex had no idea this was going on. When I found out, Alex and I were signed to the same talent agency. I immediately made them aware of the accusations and put pressure on them to drop him, which they did. This was June 2023. From the documents in the drive, it looks like things escalated even further from what I was aware of. Emotional abuse, threats of violence, use of racial slurs, which is so heartbreaking. I don't know Alice personally, but sending her so much love and support." A Twitter user by the name of Cope and Seeth decided to go through some of the DM exchanges between Alice and Alex, pointing out that some of them were modified or cropped at inopportune moments to make a wider point, the intention being to try and work out why Alice would have cropped the screenshots where you clearly can see that Alex is saved as racist N-word in her phone. Alice replies by saying, "I write in my statement multiple times that I became reckless with my use of language because this was so normalized by Alex. I am well aware this does not excuse my use of the word, but it is an honest explanation. I apologize for any offense caused by this." My issue with the poking in these areas is much like some of the comments I got on the video I did on Alex on Sunday. You are hyper-focusing on the wrong part to drive home a very different point, which can serve as a deflection from the core issue. The core issue is Alex is an abuser. That's what he is. A manipulative, coercive individual that bullies, harangues, and does not stop until he gets what he wants. And when he doesn't, he eventually pouts and begs and pleads and sends gifts via Amazon. You are instead focusing on something else to say, "Oh well, you're just as bad." It is a very disingenuous take, and many will start to accuse you of victim shaming, victim blaming, any excuse to not blame Alex. And that's because you, Cope and Seeth, have left yourself open to that, which is why many criticized you for it, and you replied with the same meme about, "I like pancakes," because, Twitter, people get very angry about this because waffles exist. There is a Twitter user by the name of Psylocke who had posted, "This whole I'm Alex situation is insane. Just blindly believing her without letting Alex say his side. Yes, what we've seen him say to her has been nasty, vile, and plain wrong. However, I do not believe she is simply an innocent victim. She's 100% done and said stuff back to him, including Cope and Seeth related tweets. They got ratioed pretty hard on this one." Now I want to go to another statement from another person. Somebody else had come out called King Annie. They had put out a statement, another Google document, 2 pages, talking about their experiences with Alex, and I want to read from that next. My experience with Imallexx. Though we never confirmed it to the public, because I personally like keeping my relationships private, I dated Alex from June 2017 till March 2018. It was the most toxic relationship I've ever been in, and I was lucky to get out of it when I did. When we were dating, though he was from England and I lived in America, we were pretty much never apart for longer than a week. We stayed in Europe for a couple of months, then went to America for 6 months. He couldn't stay 6 months straight due to visa implications, so he stayed 3 months, flew back to England for a few days, then came back to America for another 3 months. After this 6 months was over, and he couldn't come to America again for a while due to visa requirements, we spent some time away from each other, and during that time, with the help of my friends, I came to the realization that I was in the worst and most toxic relationship I had ever been in, and I had to get out. It started out great, as they always do, the honeymoon phase as they call it, but as time went on, things just got worse and worse. I was fortunate to get out when I did, but reading all the new information that's come out, he's clearly gotten worse. During the relationship, he made me feel insane, like I wasn't myself anymore. It never felt like he listened to me. I always felt belittled and inferior. When we recorded videos together, he would constantly talk over me and never let me have my moment. Most of the time when I had problems, he always somehow made it about himself or talked about his own issues. He would get stressed over his YouTube channel constantly and complain about uploading, as if it was the hardest job on the planet, and no one had it harder than him. His classic line was, "Can I catch an effing break?" If we ever had a disagreement, he would sometimes allude to the possibility of unaliving himself over minor conflicts as a threat, so I couldn't continue the conversation. It was nearly impossible to give him any kind of criticism, because it was like adding to the pile of minor issues that he already blown far out of proportion in his head. Another thing he did was spin his own narrative and twist words. He didn't just do this in the relationship, but he did it in his work with his friends. It was the main reason why many people stopped talking to him, because we started to realize that when there was even the smallest amount of drama and he heard about it, he would make sure to involve himself, even if the subject had absolutely nothing to do with him, and he would just make everything so much worse. For example, the Slazo situation. Though it was never said in the original statements by Che, he somehow came to the conclusion that it was RAPE and everyone else got the blame for saying his words. Somehow the situation went from being guilty to being a bad boyfriend to all of a sudden he's that word. This was the final nail in the coffin, and I cut all contact with him after that. During our relationship, I bought him and I matching Alex and Annie bracelets for Valentine's Day because I was like, oh neat, a company with both our names. You can see him pressing the heart on the bracelet to his lips in his Back to Nothing video, which he has since taken down from his channel, included as a link to that. The video was released as a response to me breaking up with him. He uploaded this video after I stopped talking to him, as a way of trying to guilt me into replying to him. He did to me what he has done in his relationship with Alice, where he would fly off the handle and get mad, then act all apologetic and sad to try to get me to feel sorry for him and forgive everything he has said and done. Lastly, the only time he ever laid a finger on me was when he grabbed me as I was trying to run away from a conflict. We were trying to record a YouTube video together and he was getting frustrated at having to restart the recording multiple times. He started shouting and beating his fist on the table, even going as far as to break his microphone. I was scared, so I got up to leave the room, which is when he grabbed my arm to physically stop. I remember saying, "You grabbed my arm," several times in shock, as if to say, who the F would ever grab someone like that? Once again, I was fortunate that that was the only time something like that ever happened. I got out before it got worse, as it clearly has with the new information that's come out. It saddens me that it's all come this far. I wish Alice the best privately, and it breaks my heart to have seen all the things she's gone through. I hope Alice's and my story show you what he is really like behind the scenes. If you're in an ABUSIVE relationship, please get out now. You can't fix them. There are many rather interesting points within this that corroborate beliefs that many held for years. The Slazo situation especially, the pointlessly injecting himself into dramas that don't involve him, just so he can milk it. While I can fully understand the frustration one experiences of having to re-record something over and over again, there is still no justification for your actions, and there never will be any justification for your actions. As time will pass, more and more people are going to come out and say things, tell stories, their side of things. I haven't seen Imallexx be this quiet for quite some time, so I keenly await his triumphant return to YouTube in about a month's time, where he'll then bleat on about the haters and how they are misrepresenting everything he's said and done. I think in this video what I've managed to do is do very little and provide my own opinion, just present what is now known.